So welcome everybody as well on YouTube. We are here to have the day 2 for the match for Makerere University and Chuo University, who are both present. So we'll have this match currently on the topic concerning individual carbon quota must be enforced to limit passengers and air travels. So this match is organized by Corax Foundation for the Egg Inter-University Law Debate Tournament, and we are in the group phase, so day 2, and these two universities are in the same group, the National University of Singapore and the University of Melbourne. So together with me we have my colleague Mr. Banova and as well Ms. Varley from the Corax Foundation. So I will ask very briefly to each team to introduce themselves, and then afterwards we'll start the match. Maybe I could start with Miss Mao Ihara.
Yes, good morning and good evening everyone. I'm Mao Ihara and I'm 4th year student at Chuo University. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Okelo, could you introduce yourself? Mr. Okelo?
Mr. Okelo has gone to get us some facilities, so
okay.
He will introduce himself.
So maybe you can introduce yourself? Miss Face?
Good morning.
Yes.
Good morning. I am from Makerere University.
Thank you. Just to make sure we can hear you, it's not necessary you open the camera, otherwise it can take too much on the internet, okay? But we saw you, huh? We saw you. Miss Kawano.
My name is Honoka Kawano, and I am 4th year law student at Chuo University of Japan.
Thank you. And Miss Futaba Tamura.
Good morning and good evening, everyone. I'm Futaba Tamura, and I'm a 2nd year university student. And I'm glad to be here and look forward to this debate with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, I guess Mr. Okelo will be back in few seconds, but I can already tell that, yes, this match will be having 3 judges. This 3 judges will be watching the recording of this match and will be assessing the performance of both teams. And obviously, in few seconds, I will start the drawing of positions, and after that you will have 5 minutes based on the position as well to review your notes in order to prepare the debate match. Maybe Miss Varley or Miss Urbanova, you can explain as well the time, how it will be announced, 30 seconds.
Indeed, thank you very much. Miss Varley is the timekeeper for the day. So for the speakers, the recommendation would be to keep your call in the gallery view so you can see notifications for 30 seconds, and when the time up, I will let Ms. Varley to explain.
Yes, it's very easy. When you have 30 seconds left, I will hold this yellow card, and when your time is up, I will just use this one so that you know you have to stop.
Thank you. Miss Face, is Mr. Okelo back?
And we are here with Mr. Swan as well.
Okay. So I will draw the positions, and after there will be 5 minutes for both teams to review the notes. So we share my screen, and then you will see the different possibilities. So 2 possibilities for each university, so either in favor, either against. So now I will just draw the positions, and you will know which position you have. So this is Chuo University will be in favor, and then as a consequence that will be Makerere University will be against. So it means concretely that Sorry, I need to see the topic. Chuo University, you'll be defining the position that individual carbon quota must be enforced to limit passengers' air travels. And as a consequence as well, Makerere University, you will define the position that individual carbon quota must not be enforced to limit passengers' air travels. So, my colleague will share the screen for the 5 minutes countdown for your 5 minutes preparation. So voilà, you can close your camera if not so, and in 5 minutes we start the match with Chuo University, who is in favor. Voilà. So we'll start. So you can open your camera in Japan, and we'll focus on as well on the very good audio quality on the side of Makerere University as much as possible. So I would like to give the floor now that we are starting the debate match to Chuo University for their opening statement. You have 4 minutes.
Airplanes aren't the world's biggest polluters, but they certainly do not help. Globally, organizations such as the United Nations are concerned about the rapid growth in the commercial air travel. Everyone flies, and in the future, everyone will fly even more. The International Air Transport Association projected that the number of flyers will double over the next 2 decades, and by 2036, flyers will take 7.8 billion trips annually. We will defend that individual carbon quotas must be enforced to limit passengers' air travels. In this debate, be enforced means to impose a tax on the people and companies that emit a certain amount of CO2. Moving to our preliminary statements, we are going to substantiate our position by expanding on the following points. Firstly, the system can raise the cognitive awareness of citizens. Carbon tax can heighten personal responsibility and account of carbon. By introducing the tax, people can share the new definition of personal emission and realize the importance of protecting the Earth from climate change, which means allowing for individual action within a clear framework. It also encourages positive lifestyle change. Thus, increased awareness of personal carbon can limit the transition to a net zero carbon society. Secondly, the impact on the businesses. Businesses are all urged to find more effective ways to use energy by motivating everyone to avoid the expenses of a carbon tax, because instead of paying for carbon-based electricity, people could speak to their utility company about renewable energy options, and commuters might look at the use of electric vehicles to prevent gasoline surcharges. Also, it has the possibility to decrease the number of ghost flights, which means a plan to route that an airline continues to fly despite having few or zero passengers on board. Thirdly, it can reduce not only the emission of CO2, but also the other gases causing global warmings. Aviation accounts for around 2.5% of the global CO2 emissions, but its overall contribution to climate change is higher. This is because air travel does not only emit CO2, it affects the climate in a number of more complex ways as well as emitting CO2 from burning fuel. Planes affect the concentration of other gases and pollutants in the atmosphere. While some of these impacts result in warming, the other gases induce a cooling effect. Overall, the warming effect is stronger. According to the report, the overall effect of aviation on global warming is quantified when all of these impacts were included. Although CO2 gets most of the attention, it accounts for less than half of this warming. 66% come from non-CO2 forcing. So, to set the individual carbon allowances can contribute to slowing down climate change in the terms of not only CO2. Based on these statements, we emphasize that we should impose a tax on people who fly, which would lead them to fly less and therefore reduce carbon emissions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. So now I will give the floor to Makerere University for the opening statement. You have 4 minutes.
As a planner, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, please continue.
The discussion today is about how best we as a human race can offset change in the world. I is going to present to you why the why the case made by the opposition is more detrimental in the long run to efforts in averting climate change. We must understand the statistics before we can speak. Statistically speaking, industry contributes 4% of transport, 60.4% of the emissions. It is estimated that 3% of the global population is estimated to be traveling by air regularly, right? And 12% of the carbon emitted as a result of attributable to air travel, as opposed to 74% that is attributable to road transport. As you can clearly see, road transport contributes more to the carbon emissions in the world. As the opposition, we avert that there are people who travel not only out of luxury, but because it's a necessity for them. The entire economy of the world is hinged on the smooth flow of businesses, and they are meant to throw the entire economy into a recession by limiting people. Economy is going into recession for poor middle-income earners, because if people are poor, they can afford to switch to sources of energy like electricity, and that's achievements to climate change and a harm on the environment. Additionally, there are people who travel necessity, and there are people who travel because they can. This policy is a natural consequence, significantly reducing on the number of flights overall and worldwide, because in a bid to maximize operating companies will reduce on the production and increase on the price. And when this happens, supply goes down, the prices of oil and go up. It is bad for oil
dear
and
Miss Face. Dear Miss Face.
Yes, please.
Yes, it's very difficult to understand because of the connection. Could you close the camera just to reserve the sound to the audio?
And one more tip, if you can set your view settings to close the videos of other participants, that will also lower the weight load that you have on your connection right now.
Okay, so where did you lose me from?
I think you need to restart, we'll restart the time, because we did not understand actually.
Right. I'll ask the other participants as well to turn off their cameras to decrease the load.
So, can you start? Miss Face?
Yes, is it okay for me to start now?
Yes, you can start, yes. Yes, you can start.
Yes, as I was saying, the discussion today is at its core about how best we as a human race can offset climate change in the world. My state is going to present to you the case, the reason as to why the case made by the other team is more detrimental to efforts in averting climate change in the long run. We must first have a statistical understanding of where we stand before we can proceed. Global greenhouse gas emissions by sector. The industry sector produces 24.2% of carbon emissions in the world, and the transport sector produces 16.2% of carbon emissions in the world. Of these, it is estimated that air travel contributes 12% of the carbon emitted as a result of transport, as opposed to 74% of the carbon emitted by land travel. It is also estimated that only 3% of the global population travels by air regularly. What this means is that there is a significant difference, a significant difference in the carbon emissions that are emitted on land. The opposition avers that there are people who travel not out of luxury, but because they must. It is a necessity for them to travel. The flow of the economy is premised entirely on the flow of business. The entire economy is based on a smooth flow of business transactions, and therefore it would be detrimental to throw the entire economy for a loop into a recession by limiting air travel. Imposing individual carbon quotas would restrict heavily the movements of business personalities and therefore cause the economy to go into a recession. This recession would be detrimental to the poor and middle income earners in the economy because they become poor. They are able to afford to switch to alternate sources of energy like electricity. Any achievements towards climate change will be harmed on the other side as they have to sort of cheap and more harmful methods of energy production. Secondly, the policy of individual carbon quotas has the natural consequence of significantly reducing on the number of flights overall. This is bad because they are able to maximize profits. All companies will reduce on the production and increase on the cost. This will create this will reduce supply, and the prices of oil and gas will go up. Because oil and gas will be expensive, a lot of people will not be able to afford it. They will resort to coal and wood, which are in the long run more harmful. If we agree that the ultimate goal is to conserve the environment, we know for a fact that coal and wood are worse alternatives than gas. It is the positions that limit individual capacity to travel will significantly worsen the climate change crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, the floor is back to Chuo University for your first rebuttal. You can open your camera. The person will be speaking. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. The opposing team talked about there is not significant overcome of the carbon tax, but there are many successful examples of the carbon tax, and the carbon tax can provide economic benefit at the local level. For instance, the first significant carbon tax implemented in North America was by the government of British Columbia. The policies went into effect in 2008 during the first 7 years of implementation, where GDP growth in the province was 17%, while the net CO2 emissions in the region declined by 4.7%. About 70% of total greenhouse emissions were covered by the use or purchase of fuels under the structure of this policy. That means it is possible for economic gains to occur while reducing pollution. Then we disagree with their argument about the carbon tax effectively, because given the current state of environmental pollution, even if the effect of taxation is small or it does not lead to a sufficient reduction of emissions, it should be introduced as long as there are benefits. As we said before, it's important to share the new definition of personal emission and realize the protection of protecting the earth from climate change. Moreover, the tax also encourages positive lifestyle change among the citizens because it can raise awareness of personal carbon limits to sustain the transition to a net zero carbon society. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now, I will give the floor back to Makerere University. You keep your camera off, so we can hear properly the audio. So, Makerere University, for your first rebuttal, you have 2 minutes.
Hello?
Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go.
All right, great. My name is Angelo. I'll be starting in a bit. Okay. Panel, there are two problems with the opposition case, and the first one is on the distribution or impact of their particular policy, right? We think that personal allowances have a problem that one, they'll increase the flight costs, but not for everyone. They'll particularly target those people that have already difficulty accessing flights, right? So we have already told you that the people that need to travel out of necessity and not luxury, right? So we have people that are traveling because of business, because of health reasons, because of jobs, etc., right? But the will be able to pay carbon allowances, and when they reach their cap, they'll be able to buy more carbon allowances, right? Therefore, the effect is that you actually don't do anything to put a cap on the people that contribute most to this particular carbon footprint. So people that travel by private jets and things like that, as opposed to you putting this particular cap on people that are already struggling to afford air travel, right? We think that that is detrimental, and on a distribution impact level, it's actually unfair and inequitable to people that actually need to travel out of necessity. But secondly, we think that there comes with a lot of technological barriers with the enforcement, right? So first of all, how exactly you enforce this system is national, is now exactly would work on a macro level, right, with particular regions and not particularly the proposition case. But also on the question of social accessibility, you gain little from targeting air travel as opposed to, for example, household, for example, road transport, speech that contribute significantly, much hard to influence. So, for example, right, that contribute much more as opposed to air travels that are generally out of necessity as opposed to luxury. We think that on equity, that our case gives a better benefit for climate and
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now I will give the floor back to Chuo University for the second rebuttal. You can open your camera in Chuo University for the second rebuttal. 2 minutes.
Okay. We have two arguments. The first three, as the opposition team said, of course, if the tax is imposed, you have to pay more money for air travel. Of course, consumers don't want to pay taxes, so they naturally want to buy products with lower carbon emissions. So it means, in this case, choosing an airline that uses aircraft with the lowest carbon emissions possible. So from the consumer's perspective, this is a reluctant action that does not want to incur additional costs, but that the result will be effective enough to deter carbon emissions. And also, so secondly, you can see visible negative effects of the escalating climate and biodiversity crisis on many sustainable development issues have led to increased public concern over climate change, particularly by the young. So while there are demonstrations about climate change, the large participation in social movements that many individuals also consider themselves as citizens with responsibility to the environment and future generations. To this extent, the individual carbon quotas may be effective as a symbolic policy, a practical measure that encapsulates a vision or a story about a wider change and signals and engaged citizens in this wider vision and project. So what I want to say, even if there is a little effective carbon taxes, but if you see in the long run, it's the carbon tax is beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now I will give the floor back to Makerere University for the second rebuttal. So you may start, you have 2 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so like there are essentially two reasons going to demonstrate why we think the other team loses out, right? So the first thing is significant to get, which is very important, is that our opening speaker told you that this is the advantage of actually worsening the fight against climate change. Why is that so? Right? Because this course of action has necessary consequences reducing on the amount of flights. So what does this then mean? That oil companies will have to significantly reduce on the prices of oil because they want to maximize profits. Why is that bad in the long term for the environment? Because we have to understand oil is expensive.
We don't hear you at this moment. Hello? Mr. Okello?
Yes, you're saying you can't hear me?
Yes, please restart because we didn't hear you for 5 seconds.
Wow, okay. All right, let me start afresh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can I now be heard properly and clearly?
Yes.
Okay, so in this picture, I'm going to demonstrate to you two things. First, I'm going to show you why this has much worse impacts on the environment. But secondly, I'm going to demonstrate to you why, in case we need to fight climate change, focusing all our effort on only air flight is bad compared to like focusing it on everything, right? Because like our opening speaker told you, things like load transport contribute significantly more to the adverse like effects of climate change, right? So the first argument on like the economic impact on this and why it's bad for the environment. Firstly, the natural consequence of this course of action is that prices of oil will significantly go up because prices have those flights have gone down. Prices of oil will go up because people want to maximize profits from production of oil. Why is this? When oil becomes expensive across the globe, individuals are significantly forced to opt for cheaper sources of energy. What does this then look like? That people in developing countries who are able to afford oil because it's much cheaper will then be forced to look for much cheaper sources like coal and wood and things like that, because these are much cheaper options than oil and gas, which have become more expensive because of a reduction in flights, which has a natural consequence of reducing on supply, because a lot of people aren't buying this oil for like truck and things like that. Why is it bad for people to opt for coal and wood? Because in the long term, coal is more disastrous to the environment than oil and gas actually are, right? But people will then be forced to use things like wood. And if people are cutting down trees, then there is no green environment to actually absorb the CO2 which is being emitted into the environment. We think in the long term, this has a natural consequence of worsening the environment far more than you get anything like from the other team in today's like discussion, right? But then secondly, we tell you again from our side that aviation only accounts for 2.1 to 2.4% of the like general gas emissions, like out of 100%, right? We tell you things like travel and others account more 20% each on annual basis. It is most important that we do not negate that aviation does contribute. It is just for us to only focus all our efforts on one part, which contributes towards like the problem, right? We need an equitable distribution of the burden. That means we need to focus more on what is presently polluting the environment more, while also paying attention to the problem of aviation.
Thank you very much. So now we move to the conclusion. So we'll give the floor to Chuo University. You can open your camera for your conclusion, yes. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, so we'll now recap and reinforce the main topics presented, where we stated individual carbon quotas must be enforced to limit passengers' air travels. As the opposing team said, introducing carbon quotas on air travel may include points that are not conducive to maintaining and improving the global environment. However, we believe the bad points are lesser concern compared to the benefit to be gained. And again, considering the current global environmental situation, if there is any profit at all, it should be introduced. Environmental issues in all their daily activities and choose better way. And moreover, it brings good effects to companies. They are very always looking acquire customers and anticipate that people will choose flights with the lowest carbon emissions, and they will have services that meet their needs. And as a result, there is competition among companies to reduce their carbon emissions, spurring the industry as a whole to move toward environmental improvement. And again, it's important to look back at the fact that it does not only reduce carbon emissions. Actions that people change in consideration of carbon will ultimately reduce emissions, of other harmful substances as well. So this effect will certainly improve the global environment. So based on this argument, we emphasize individual carbon quotas must be enforced to limit passengers' air travels. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now I will give the floor to Makerere University for the conclusion as well. You have 2 minutes.
Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
All right, great. Angela, again, I'll be concluding for the team. Okay, panel. There are three things in this debate. First is on the question of engineering social change and cognitive awareness, which is probably the strongest argument from the proposition team, right? We think that this is problematic because, one, it targets a very small number of people, right? i.e. the 3% of the globe that actually travel regularly, right? That means on an impact, you're actually targeting a very small contribution to the larger problem of climate change, right? That means 2.5% of carbon contribution, right? We think that they are larger contributors versus individuals, right? We think on the distribution level, it is better to target, for example, industry or, for example, household use, because it would have a net big benefit on the carbon or the carbon emission that comparatively was for them to give for their case. But secondly, we think that what you do is to consequently, one, increase the cost of flight, two, increase the cost of oil, right, which is for climate change. Two reasons. First, on inequitable argument, right, the problem, whereas those people that are low income and middle income earners would actually not have that luxury, right, for them, flight actually become something is more difficult. And yet we have already asserted that some of these people actually need to fly, right? We think that that is therefore a detriment on something that they do not account for on their side of the house. How exactly do they ensure that equity and equality is ensured within their policy, right? That the big contributors are actually the ones that tax the most and are actually the ones that the most are actually the ones that cut the most in order to ensure a maximum net benefit for reducing carbon emissions, right? We think that that is an important aspect of this particular debate that you only get from the opposition side.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we are done now with the match. We heard both conclusions, and I think we can proceed now to simply get some of your impressions. So you can open your camera for the Japanese team, and as well we keep your cameras off, but we'll ask as well feedback to the Makerere team. So first of all, Miss Ihara, what do you think about the match and your performance and both teams' performance as well?
Yes. I really enjoyed today's debate. And we were actually unfamiliar with this topic, and it took us some time to get used to it, but we learned a lot from the first perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Angelo, so what did you think about the match and your performance?
Hello. Jesus. Hello, Angelo here.
Yes.
I thought that the debate was good. It was really fun, exchanging ideas on a topic as important as climate change. I thank the prop team. Was very, very worthy opponents, and yeah, we hope for the best.
Thank you very much. Miss Kawano, Onoka Kawano, what did you think?
First of all, it was interesting to debate with law students who live far away from us. We were also thinking about what to say on the con side, but it was interesting to be exposed to different points of view with ours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Okelo, Fortunate Okelo, what did you think about the match?
I thought today's round was pretty interesting. I enjoyed having the discussion with the team from Japan. It was really interesting. I also hope to visit Japan one day.
Yes, of course. I have been 3 times. It's a great place to go, I can tell you. So, Miss Tamura, Futaba Tamura, what did you think about the match?
Thank you. Thank you all. I would be thankful for my colleagues and also the counterpart of team from Uganda. So I really enjoyed the debate, and the opposite team's arguments are well prepared and amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And Miss Face, Asasira Anita Face.
It was, first of all, thank you all very much for your participation. It was a very interesting debate. It was lovely to engage with the team from Japan, and yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks to both teams. Maybe some words as well from Miss Urbanova?
Thank you. And really, thank you both teams for your research and for your execution of your arguments. Right now, it's been second match for both of your teams, and it's been really good to see your progress from different topics and different argumentation styles as you're improving. The results will be available once all 3 judges submit their score sheets. As with the round 1, we'll compile the results and provide you with the detailed scores and the feedback if the judges decide to give it. And once more, congratulations and well done on your research and execution.
Thank you. And Miss Varley as well, maybe?
Yes, it was really a pleasant debate because I think both teams came up with strong arguments, so it was really nice to hear.
Thank you. So, to conclude, thanks indeed for your second match to both teams. You will have a third match, not in 2 weeks, but in 3 weeks from now, because there is a break for Easter. But at the end of April will be your third and last match. So it means Chuo University will have a match against Melbourne University, and Makerere University will have the last match against National University of Singapore. So thanks again. As mentioned, you will receive the results in a few days, and we keep in touch, of course. Thank you again, and have a nice rest of the evening in Japan and rest of the afternoon in Uganda. Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.